You know how some silences aren't really empty? Some are just heavy, filled with this quiet dread, like you're holding your breath right before a scream. You try to brush it off, right? It's nothing, you tell yourself. The house is just settling. It's the wind. Or maybe my mind's just playing tricks on me. That's exactly what I told myself. Until the silence in my apartment wasn't silent anymore. Until my closet started to whisper. And what it said, what it showed, well, that changed everything. It started small, like a breath, a little sigh of air where no air should have been moving. You know that feeling when you're totally alone, and suddenly every tiny sound is cranked up to 11? A floorboard creaks upstairs. The fridge hums. A little too loudly. You strain your ears, trying to figure it out, to make it make sense. But this was different. This felt like someone was telling a secret meant just for me, and the secret was that I wasn't alone. Not at all. I'd finally found the apartment after months of searching. It was the top floor of this converted Victorian building. Huge bay windows, original hardwood floors. Honestly, it was everything I'd ever wanted. A little rough around the edges, maybe, but it had character. My kind of character, I thought. It even came with this massive, dark wood wardrobe in the bedroom that the previous tenant couldn't be bothered to move. It was obviously an antique, with these ornate carvings that were beautiful, but also a little unsettling. They were so intricate, depicting these scenes I couldn't quite make out, figures that seemed to twist and reach. The estate agent just shrugged it off. Old, isn't it? He'd said, probably worth a bit, or nothing at all. Up to you if you keep it. I decided I loved it. It added to the apartment's charm, like a silent, stoic guardian watching over my new life. Those first few weeks were amazing. Sunlight poured through those big windows. I painted the walls this warm, inviting yellow, and I really started to feel at home. The wardrobe just stood in the corner, mostly empty. My modern, flimsy clothes felt almost rude next to its grand, aged interior. Sometimes, late at night, when the city outside finally quieted down, I'd catch its scent, old wood, and a hint of something else, something vaguely floral, but really faded, like potpourri that had been left out for 100 years. I'd just smile. It was all part of the charm. The first time I heard it, I was just drifting off to sleep. It was this faint murmur, like someone sighing in the next room. I shot bolt upright, heart pounding. My neighbors were super quiet. I'd barely ever heard a peep from them. I held my breath, listening, but there was nothing else. Just the usual city hum. Wind, I mumbled, punching my pillow back into shape. Or the pipes. Old houses like this always have noisy pipes, right? But then, the next night, it happened again. A soft, drawn-out sound, like a long zis being held. This time, I was sure it came from the wardrobe. I flipped on my bedside. Lamp, and the sudden glare made all the shadows jump. The wardrobe just stood there, impassive, its dark wood gleaming faintly. I got out of bed, my bare feet cold on the floorboards, and crept towards it. I pressed my ear against the heavy door. Silence. The wood felt cold, definitely colder than the rest of the room. I shivered, telling myself I was being ridiculous, and went back to bed, but I left the lamp on for a bit longer. I mean, being scared of closets is a thing, right? It's the darkness, the closed-in space, the not knowing what's hiding in there. This was just an old piece of furniture. Nothing more. The whispers didn't stop, though. Over the next week, they became a nightly thing. Never loud, always just on the edge of hearing, like snippets of a conversation you'd hear through a thick wall. Sometimes it was a single drawn-out vowel. Sound, other times a series of soft, hissing sounds. I started sleeping with earplugs, but it was useless. It was like the sounds weren't just going into my ears, but echoing directly inside my head. I tried to explain it away. Old wood creaks, it expands and contracts. Air currents. My own overactive imagination, probably fueled by too many late-night horror movies. I even tried to joke about it with my friend Chloe when we were out for coffee. So, I think my antique wardrobe is haunted, I said, trying to sound breezy. She just laughed. Oh, really? Is it a handsome ghost? Maybe he'll leave you flowers. More like he's trying to lull me to sleep with some really bad SMR, I replied, but the joke fell flat, even to me. Her just brushing it off like that, though, made me feel even more alone with it. You know how in scary stories the main character's experiences are often dismissed? It just makes them feel more isolated. That's a key theme, isn't it? One night, the whispers changed. It wasn't just random sounds anymore. I heard a word. Just one. Sarah. My name. I froze. Every muscle in my body went rigid. It was faint. Barely there, like an echo caught on the wind, but there was no mistaking it. Chills just raced down my spine. This wasn't the house settling. This wasn't the wind. Something in that wardrobe knew my name. People say spirits can attach themselves to objects, especially antiques. That's a common idea in paranormal stuff. Suddenly, that wardrobe didn't feel like a charming piece of history anymore. It felt like an intruder. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I just sat up in bed, staring at the wardrobe, the first real stirrings of fear coiling in my stomach. The room, my dream apartment, suddenly felt alien and threatening. Those beautiful bay windows now seemed like vacant eyes staring in at me. The darkness in the corners of the room felt deeper, more complete. The next day, I decided I had to investigate. Properly. In the bright morning light, my fear didn't feel quite as strong. I pulled open the heavy wardrobe doors. It smelled strongly of old wood and dust, and that faint, weird floral scent, which now seemed a bit cloying. It was deep, deeper than I'd first realized. There was a rail for clothes, a few wooden shelves at the bottom. I ran my hands along the inside walls, knocking gently, listening for hollow spots. Nothing. It was just an old, empty wardrobe. As I was about to close it, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. On the back panel, almost hidden in the deep grain of the dark wood, there were scratches. Not just accidental marks, these were deliberate. They looked like tally marks, dozens of them, scored deep into the wood. And below them, a single crudely carved word. Let me out. My blood ran cold. This wasn't quaint. This wasn't charming. This was a message. A desperate, chilling message. That fear of the unknown, the stuff we can't see or understand. That's what really fuels our terror in these situations. I slammed the door shut, my heart hammering against my ribs. The dream apartment was quickly turning into a place of serious anxiety. Finding that carving changed everything. My attempts to rationalize it all just fell apart. This wasn't just an old house making noises anymore. There was an intelligence here, a history etched into the wardrobe itself. And it was trying to communicate. The whispers got louder, more frequent. They weren't just my name anymore. Now I heard phrases, fragmented and faint, but definitely words. So cold. Help me. It's dark. They always sounded sorrowful, tinged with this desperate pleading, and they always seemed to come directly from the wardrobe. I started to dread nighttime. Sleep became this battlefield, my mind on high alert, straining against those creeping whispers. I tried playing loud music, podcasts, anything to drown them out, but the murmurs would just weave themselves through the other sounds, insidious and persistent. I thought about getting rid of the wardrobe. I even looked up companies that dealt with antique furniture removal. But something held me back, this strange reluctance. Morbid curiosity, maybe? Or a tiny, misguided bit of empathy for whatever was trapped. If there was something in there, something suffering, didn't I have some kind of responsibility? Or was that exactly what it wanted me to think? One evening, I was in the kitchen, as far away from the bedroom as I could get, trying to distract myself by cooking some elaborate meal I had zero appetite for. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Then, a sound from the bedroom, not a whisper. A soft, distinct creak. The sound of a heavy wooden door opening. I froze, the knife clattering from my hand onto the counter. My breath caught in my throat. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that it was the wardrobe. I hadn't touched it since finding the carvings. Slowly, cautiously, I moved towards the bedroom. Each footstep on the hardwood floor seemed deafening in the silence. I peeked around the doorframe. The room was dim, the evening light fading outside, and one of the wardrobe doors was ajar. Just a few inches. A sliver of deeper darkness within. My heart was going crazy, like a frantic bird beating against my ribs. Hello? I called out, my voice a pathetic little quaver. No response. Just that narrow gap, like a watching eye. I forced myself to walk towards it. Part of me was screaming to run, to get out of the apartment and never look back. But another, stronger part, the part that needed to understand, pushed me forward. As I got closer, a smell drifted from the opening. Not the usual old wood and faded floral. This was different. A damp, earthy smell, like freshly turned soil, or an open grave. And then the whisper, clearer than ever before. Not pleading this time, almost conversational. You opened it. I stumbled back, a gasp escaping me. It wasn't just in my head. It was real. The voice was low, raspy, and undeniably feminine. It seemed to be coming from the very depths of the wardrobe. Who are you? I managed, my voice trembling. A faint chuckle, dry and rustling like dead leaves. I'm the one who waits. What do you want? To be free. The words were laced with this chilling desire. You can help me. You're so warm. The air in the room dropped several degrees. I could actually see my breath misting in front of me. A cold spot, classic sign of a paranormal presence. I remembered reading about that. How? I asked, even though every instinct screamed at me to stop talking to it. Just a little further. Come closer, Sarah. Let me tell you a secret. The invitation just hung there in the air, heavy and menacing. The darkness inside the wardrobe seemed to deepen, to pulse. I felt this strange pull, a compulsion to step towards it, to peer into that abyss. That universal fear of closets often taps into this primal fear of the unknown, doesn't it? I thought of the carvings. Let me out. Was this the thing that had carved them? Or something that had trapped it? The uncertainty was terrifying. I didn't go closer. I backed away, slowly at first, then turned and practically fled the bedroom. I didn't stop until I was in the living room, bathing in the artificial brightness of every single lamp I could switch on. My hands were shaking, so violently I could barely even flick the light switches. The wardrobe door stayed ajar. I knew because I couldn't bring myself to go back into the bedroom to close it. I spent that night on the sofa, wrapped in a duvet, jumping at every creak and groan of the old building. Sleep was impossible. The dream apartment had become a prison, and that antique wardrobe was its malevolent heart. The encounters started to change after that. The whispers were less frequent, but when they came, they were different. The pleading, sorrowful tone was gone. Now, there was an edge to them, a sly, manipulative quality. Sometimes, I'd hear what sounded like a child crying softly. A sound perfectly designed to tug at your heartstrings. Other times, the whispers would be taunting, mocking. Scared, Sarah? You should be. Small objects near the wardrobe would move. A book I'd left on my knitstand would be on the floor. The pen I kept by my bed would be across the room. One morning, I found a single withered black rose lying on my pillow. There were no roses in my apartment. The floral scent I'd initially associated with the wardrobe now seemed connected to this. A funereal, decaying sweetness. I started to feel watched constantly. Even when I wasn't in the bedroom, I'd feel this prickling sensation on my skin, that unmistakable feeling of unseen eyes on me. The sense of dread was everywhere, a heavy blanket smothering the joy I'd once felt in my new home. My dream had curdled into a waking nightmare. The psychological effects of haunted places, the fear of the unknown, it was really taking its toll. I knew I had to do something. Living like this just wasn't sustainable. I was barely eating, barely sleeping. My work was suffering. Chloe was starting to get seriously worried about me. Her earlier jokes were replaced with genuine concern when she saw the dark circles under my eyes and how frayed my nerves were. Maybe you should move, Sarah, she said gently one afternoon, after I'd broken down and told her about the rose, the moving objects, and those chillingly intelligent whispers. I can't, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure why. Was it stubbornness? A refusal to be driven out of my own home? Or was it something else? A deeper, more insidious connection to whatever was in the wardrobe? The thought that an entity might attach itself to a person was a terrifying possibility. The entity in the wardrobe seemed to sense my internal struggle, my weakening resolve. The whispers became more demanding, more insistent. You promised to. Help me, Sarah. You can't go back on your word. I never promised anything. I'd shout back at the closed wardrobe doors, feeling like I was losing my mind. A low, throaty chuckle would be the only reply. Oh, but you did, the moment you listened. One night, the whispers took on a new, horrifying dimension. They weren't just words anymore. They were visions. Images that flashed in my mind's eye when I was near the wardrobe, or even just thinking about it. I saw glimpses of a woman, pale and gaunt, with long dark hair and eyes that burned with this cold fire. She was always in old-fashioned clothing, her face contorted in either anguish or rage. Sometimes I'd see her inside the wardrobe, clawing at the wood, her silent screams echoing in my head. Other times, I'd see her in my apartment, standing in doorways, watching me. Was this the kind of dark entity people talked about, those amorphous black masses? Or was this the original owner, her painful emotions somehow imprinted on the furniture? The entity was growing stronger, its influence spreading beyond the wardrobe. It was no longer just whispering secrets. It was showing me its power, its darkness, and it was making its intentions clearer. It didn't just want to be free. It wanted something from me. What do you want from me? I finally screamed at the wardrobe one night, completely sleep-deprived and desperate, my voice raw. I was standing in the middle of my bedroom, the only light spilling in from the hallway. I'd avoided turning on the bedroom lights for days, as if the darkness would somehow keep it contained. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, that familiar, horrifying creak of the wardrobe door. It swung open slowly, not just ajar this time, but wide open, revealing this impenetrable blackness within. The coldness pouring out of it was intense, biting at my skin. The raspy female voice, no longer a whisper, but a clear, chilling sound, filled the room. I want release. And you, Sarah, are the key. Release from what? How am I the key? My teeth were chattering. Whether from cold or fear, I couldn't tell. This wooden cage, the voice hissed, and I felt this wave of intense bitterness and fury wash over me, so strong it almost buckled my knees. Centuries I've been bound to it, watching, waiting, for someone like you, someone like me, someone receptive, someone who listens, someone who feels. There was a possessive, almost hungry tone to her words now. So many have owned this prison. They heard, they feared, they got rid of it, or they ignored me until they withered and died. But you engaged. You're curious, aren't you, Sarah? I couldn't deny it. Even through my terror, a sick part of me was horribly fascinated. The human mind's desire to find explanations, to fill in the blanks of the unknown, can be a powerful, dangerous lure. What if I don't help you? I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. A sound like dry, crackling laughter filled the air. It seemed to come from all around me, not just the wardrobe. Oh, but you will. You see, Sarah, I'm not just in the wardrobe anymore. I'm in the room. I'm in the house. And soon, I'll be in you. A wave of nausea hit me. Those amorphous black masses people sometimes describe in paranormal encounters. Was this what it was becoming? An entity that could spread, could possess the whispers? They weren't just me talking to you, dear Sarah. They were me, tasting you, finding the cracks, the little footholds, your fears, your loneliness, your desire for something more. My blood turned to ice. Every moment I'd spent listening, trying to understand, I hadn't been investigating. I'd been inviting it in. The darkness in the wardrobe seemed to swell, to billow out like a physical thing. I could almost see a shape forming in the blackness, tall and indistinct, but undeniably present. A shadow deeper than the surrounding. Shadows. I need a vessel, Sarah. A warm, living vessel to walk in the sun again. To feel again. This old wood has grown so tiresome. The voice was seductive now, like a venomous caress. And you have such life in you? So much warmth. The sinister intentions were finally out in the open. It wasn't some trapped, pitiable spirit. It was a predator. And it had been grooming me. The initial sorrowful whispers. The pleas for help. All a calculated trick. I remembered reading about a creepypasta called The Closet Game, which involved summoning something malevolent. I hadn't done any ritual, but I had opened a door, both literally and metaphorically. No, I whispered, backing away. No, I won't let you. You think you have a choice? The voice was laced with amusement, a cruel ancient mirth. I've been patient. I've learned you. Soon, the whispers won't be coming from the closet, Sarah. They'll be coming from your own lips. And you'll say everything I want you to say. The darkness in the wardrobe seemed to lunge, or maybe it was just a trick of my terrified mind, but I felt an icy tendril brush my cheek, a touch that burned like frostbite and smelled of grave dirt and decayed roses. I screamed, a raw tearing, sound, and turned, finally, to run. My dream apartment had become a hunting ground, and I was the prey. I ran. I didn't even know where I was going, just away from that voice, that suffocating presence, that icy touch. I fumbled for the apartment door, my fingers clumsy and slick with sweat. Behind me, I heard the wardrobe door slam shut with a sound like a coffin lid sealing. But the coldness, that feeling of being watched, it followed me. I burst out into the hallway of the building, then scrambled down the stairs, my breath sobbing in my chest. I didn't stop until I was outside on the street, the cool night air a shocking contrast to the frigid atmosphere of my apartment. I just stood there, shaking, my mind reeling. What could I possibly do? Call the police? What would I tell them? My wardrobe is trying to possess me? They'd think I was insane. Chloe? She was worried. Sure, but this was beyond anything she could help with. I felt utterly, terrifyingly alone. The entity was right. My isolation was a weapon it used against me. That I ended up at a 24-hour diner, huddled over a cup of coffee I couldn't drink. The normalcy of the place, a jarring contrast to the horror I'd just escaped. But even there, amidst the clatter of cutlery and the low murmur of late-night conversations, I couldn't shake the feeling of its presence. It was like a splinter in my mind, a cold spot in my soul. It had tasted me, it had said. It had found the cracks. I knew I couldn't run forever. It was tied to the wardrobe, yes, but it had also made a connection with me. If I abandoned the apartment, abandoned the wardrobe, would it follow? Legends often suggest that these kinds of entities can attach themselves to a person. The thought was unbearable. A strange sort of resolve began to form amidst my terror. This thing had invaded my life, turned my sanctuary into a place of fear, and was threatening to consume me. I couldn't let it win. But how do you fight a shadow? How do you silence a whisper that's trying to crawl inside your head? I remembered the carved words, "Let me out," and then the entity's own words, "I want release. Release from the wardrobe." But what if the wardrobe wasn't just its prison, but also its anger, its source of power? Some paranormal stories talk about objects being portals or anchors for non-human entities. What if my wardrobe was something like that? I had to go back. The thought filled me with this visceral dread, but the alternative, a life spent looking over my shoulder, waiting for the whispers to start in my own voice, was even worse. The journey back to the apartment was the longest of my life. Every shadow seemed to writhe. Every gust of wind sounded like its mocking laughter. When I finally stood before my apartment door, key trembling in my hand, I almost turned back. But I thought of its smug, possessive tone. You think you have a choice? I had to make one. I pushed the door open. The apartment was cold, silent. The living room, with its overturned lamps from my flight, looked like a scene of a struggle. The door to the bedroom was closed. I'd slammed it shut when I fled, hadn't I? Or had it closed it? Taking a deep breath, I walked towards the bedroom. My hand hovered over the doorknob. This was it. The confrontation. My heart hammered so hard, I thought it would break right through my ribs. I threw the door open. The room was freezing. The wardrobe stood in the corner, its doors shut tight. For a moment I hoped it was over. That my escape had somehow broken its hold. Then the whispering started. Not from the wardrobe, not from all around me. Sarah, clever Sarah, you came back for me. The voice was everywhere, inside my head, in the air, a cacophony of its chilling tones. I knew you would. We have a bond now. The wardrobe doors creaked open, slowly, invitingly. But this time, I didn't see just darkness. I saw her, the woman from my visions. She was standing just inside the threshold of the wardrobe, pale and gaunt, her dark hair swirling around her as if caught in an unfelt wind, her eyes burning with an incandescent malice. She wasn't fully solid, her edges blurred and smoky, like an amorphous black mass taking on a horrifyingly distinct shape. "Come, Sarah," she said, her voice a mixture of the raspy whispers and a clearer, more resonant tone. She held out a spectral hand. "It's time to become one." The room plunged into an icy darkness, the remaining light from the hallway extinguished as if a switch had been thrown. I was alone in the pitch black with her, the temperature plummeting. The air grew thick, heavy, making it hard to breathe. This was it, the peak of the nightmare. "You want release?" I choked out, my voice barely audible. "You want to be free of that wardrobe?" Her laughter echoed around me, cold and sharp. "And into you, my dear, a much more accommodating vessel." "Then take it," I screamed, not in surrender, but in defiance. I had this desperate, half-formed plan, born of sheer terror and a sliver of something I'd read, something about these entities being tied to their source. I lunged, not towards her, but towards the wardrobe itself. My hands found the cold, ornate carvings of the doors. I pulled, not to open them further, but to unbalance the colossal piece of furniture. It was immensely heavy, rooted to the spot for what felt like a century. "What are you doing?" Her voice was sharp, laced with sudden surprise, a hint of panic. I threw all my weight against it, adrenaline surging through me. "If you're bound to it," I grunted, straining, "then maybe you should stay with it." The wardrobe teetered. For a horrifying second, I thought it would crush me. "No," she shrieked, her voice losing its composure, becoming a raw sound of fury and fear. The spectral form lunged towards me, her fingers like icy claws reaching for my face. But as the wardrobe began its slow, inexorable fall, her form flickered violently. The coldness in the room pulsed, and her image distorted, stretching and contracting like a reflection in disturbed water, with a deafening crash. The antique wardrobe slammed face down onto the floor, the sound echoing through the apartment like a thunderclap. Dust billowed, choking me, and in that instant, the oppressive cold vanished. The suffocating presence lifted. The whispers in my head ceased. Silence. A true, empty silence. I lay on the floor, gasping for breath, covered in dust, my body trembling uncontrollably. The room was still dark, but it was a normal darkness now, not that crushing, sentient blackness from before. Slowly, I pushed myself up, my limbs aching. Massive wardrobe lay prone, like a felled giant. Its ornate back, now exposed, was a mess of rough, unfinished wood, a stark contrast to its grand facade. There was no sign of the woman, no lingering scent of decay, no whispers. Just the wreckage of an old piece of furniture and the settling dust. Had I done it? Had I actually defeated it? Or had I merely inconvenienced it? The terror hadn't entirely gone. It lay coiled in my stomach, a cold knot of apprehension. I fumbled my way out of the bedroom and into the hallway, turning on every light switch I could find. The apartment felt different, lighter. The oppressive atmosphere that had been building for weeks was gone. It was just an apartment again. My apartment. But the image of that falling wardrobe, the shriek of the entity, the way its form had flickered and died, it was seared into my mind. I knew I couldn't stay there another night, not with that thing lying defeated, or perhaps merely dormant, in my bedroom. I called Chloe, my voice still shaking. I didn't try to explain everything, not then. I just said there had been an incident that I needed to get out. She didn't ask many questions, just heard the raw fear in my voice and came immediately as I packed a small bag. My eyes kept straying to the closed bedroom door. Was it truly over? Or was this just a temporary break? The fear that it wasn't truly over, that a lingering dread would remain. That's a common trope in these stories for a reason, because it feels terrifyingly plausible. I never went back to live in that apartment. Chloe helped me find a new place, something modern, sterile, with no antique furniture, and definitely no ominous wardrobes. We hired movers, a specialist company that dealt with unusual clearances, to empty the old apartment. I gave them specific instructions about the wardrobe. I wanted it removed, and I wanted it destroyed, burned, if possible. I didn't want anyone else to ever open those doors, to ever hear those whispers. I didn't want anyone else to become its prey. They confirmed it was gone. Just an empty room left behind. Life, slowly, began to return to some kind of normal. But I'm changed. I'll never look at an antique piece of furniture the same way. Again, I'm wary of silence. Sometimes in the dead of night, when the world is hushed, I still find myself straining my ears, half expecting to hear a faint, sibilant whisper on the edge of hearing. The human brain is wired to seek patterns, and fear can carve some really deep pathways. Was the entity destroyed with the wardrobe? Or is it merely adrift, waiting for a new anchor, a new receptive mind to latch onto? That thought is a cold companion in the quiet hours. Stories always say these things can attach themselves. Follow you. My new closet is small, functional, and brightly lit. I keep the door slightly ajar, always. Not out of fear of what's inside, but as a small act of defiance, a reminder that I control the spaces in my life now, but sometimes, very rarely, when I'm tired, or when the shadows are playing tricks, I'll catch a fleeting scent. Faded florals and something else. Something like old, dark wood, and for a heart-stopping moment, I'll hear it. Or think I hear it. A faint, drawn-out sigh. It's probably just the wind. Or the house settling. Or my own mind forever marked. By the whispers, probably. But I don't lean in to listen anymore. I know better now. Some secrets are best left unheard. Some doors are best left unopened. And some closets should never, ever be allowed to speak. Because you might not like what they have to say. And once you've truly listened, you can never fully unhear it. The nightmare, in some small way, always lingers.